Welcome to My Morning Cup, a podcast produced by Costa Media Advisors and brought to you by the generous support of the Tennessee Valley Authority. To learn more about TVA's impact on our community, follow TVA on Instagram at TVA and on Twitter X at TVA News. My Morning Cup, where we have interesting conversations with genuine people. I'm Mike Costa, your host. My guest this week is Kim White. Kim is the Vice Chancellor for Advancement at the University of Tennessee, Chattanooga, and the Executive Director of the UC Foundation. As most Chattanoogans know, Kim's been involved with many of the organizations that have driven the Scenic City's success over the past few decades. Kim, the results of your leadership can be seen throughout Chattanooga, and there's one thing we want to know. What's in your morning cup?
Lots of coffee and caffeine.
Yeah. What's your preference?
My preference of coffee is Chat's.
Yeah?
Chat's coffee. I get the espresso delivered to my office every week.
Oh, you drink espresso?
Espresso. I start with a latte every morning. Yes.
Do you really?
Yes, I'm a very good barista. Years of practice.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow, I didn't realize that.
Yes.
So you're a caffeine addict.
I am.
See, I went decaf a number of years ago. I just couldn't take it anymore.
My office might like it better if I was decaf. I don't know.
Probably so. Well, and I'm so glad you're here. You're someone I've had the privilege of knowing over the last couple decades, who's been a friend, who's obviously involved in a lot of things, but personally been extremely helpful to me, and I appreciate that. And you've got a great story to tell, and that's what I wanted to do. I wanted to hear how you became Kim White.
Oh, well, thank you, Mike. Thanks for reaching out. And you're right, we've known each other for a long time, and it's an honor to be here.
Yeah, well, it's going to be fun. So you're born in Athens, Tennessee.
Yes, right up the road, Athens, Tennessee.
How long did you live there before you moved south?
Not very long. My dad was with TVA, and that's how
our sponsor.
Oh, wow, that's good.
Yeah,
and that's how we ended up in Chattanooga. So back then, we moved several times. Kentucky, Western Kentucky, different parts of Tennessee. But in 8th grade, I moved to Chattanooga.
8th grade.
Yes.
So if your dad was with TVA, did it have to do with the dam or working downtown?
He worked some downtown, but he was mostly on the river. So monitoring all the river.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
And you grew up in the Hickson area?
We grew up in Hickson. Hickson High School. Yes. The Wildcats.
And what was that like at that time?
Moving in 8th grade,
that's a hard time
as
to
someone
move.
that was not into sports. And it's interesting, when I talk about my story, I said I never really found firm footing, I think, until I got to college. I was very shy, didn't have a lot of confidence in high school. I was not involved in anything. And it really took getting to UTC. I credit UTC for so much of what I've learned in life, and getting involved in different organizations that I guess brought me out of my shell.
Do you have siblings?
I do. I'm the oldest.
You're the oldest of how many?
2. I have a total of 3, but I have a sister went to Notre Dame and a brother that went to Hickson.
So you move in the 8th grade. You're I guess a bit introverted.
Yes.
And so you just kind of get through high school minding your own business?
Yes. And when I got to UTC, I mean, really, I was a working student, and that's how I ended up at UTC. I could live at home, and back then, UTC really was a commuter school. And working full time and going to school, and I did that my freshman year. And then by the time I was a sophomore, I was encouraged to get involved in some organizations, and that's really when I think really I came into my own.
You mentioned working through college. Were you also working in high school? Did you have the part-time jobs?
Oh, yes, at Casual Corner. I guess at the
Casual
mall,
Corner,
where you spend more money on clothes than you ever bring home. But yes.
And what about at UTC? Was that also Casual Corner?
No, I worked at a place called Gelco Galleries. It was right down the street from my little neighborhood, because I live in the Lovins building. So on 7th Street, I worked at Gail and Burl Coulter's gallery.
Gail Coulter was president of Kiwanis Club when I first moved to town and was a Kiwanian.
Well, she's lovely. I would say she was such a great mentor for me when I was in college.
Yeah, really, really nice person and impressive business person,
Yes,
too.
yes.
So talk about your UTC years. I know you got very involved with your sorority. What were some of the other things?
Yeah, really, sorority was the big thing. I became president of my sorority my junior year in college, and which was an incredible experience. But student government, I think I was involved in just about anything you can get involved with in college.
What made you pivot? What kind of lit the fire that said, "Hey, I got to get involved with stuff"?
I started getting I was encouraged to go through Rush and became a member of Chi Omega, and then I guess I found my tribe. I found a bunch of women, a group of women that supported each other and we all lifted each other up, and we're still friends to this day. So it really, confidence, you start getting some confidence and you start stepping out of your comfort zone. And I've always been one to do that, is when doors open, even if it's scary, so that's how you grow. And so the more I did, the more I grew as a person.
So you're president your junior year, which is a little unusual that you, I don't know if it was an election or chosen over potentially a senior. So when you step out of your comfort zone and you're now the president of the sorority, what was that feeling of, oh my God, what, I caught the car, what do I do?
That was probably some of it, but it taught me to be very prepared. I think, if you don't have a lot of confidence, to get more confidence, you over prepare. But I think, Mike, I've always tried to be in any role authentic, be who I am. If I don't have all the answers, to say I don't have all the answers, and surround myself with great friends and supporters to help me, and we help each other get better.
What did you major in at UTC?
You won't believe this. So I spent my whole life explaining this. I was an art major at UTC. So I can't say enough about liberal arts. I started off in communications, and I was on the 4-year plan. Again, I was a working student. And back then, just to get the classes, I ended up my senior year switching to art so I could graduate in 4 years. But, I think about how I've used that in so many ways, especially like at River City with planning for a city and how you look at things critically. And I'm a big supporter of the arts. I don't paint anymore. But it really, I think a liberal arts background has been critical for my success.
So painting was your artistic release? What kind of painting?
Yes. Oil painting, all different kinds. Yeah.
Landscapes?
People, landscapes, abstract.
Oh, do you do it anymore?
I don't. I always say when I retire, maybe I will get back
you're not
at
going to
it.
retire. You drink too much espresso to retire.
That's true. But I support the arts. So, but yeah, I admire art.
Well, and I think that's an important point that, and we were talking a little bit prior to recording this, is that so many people today aren't doing anything closely related to what they went to school for.
You're right. You're exactly right. I think it is, again, liberal arts is critical thinking. It's relationships. It's who you know, who knows you. It's to be able to connect the dots. I think it's, you think about how many careers you have in a lifetime. I've had quite a path, and one has led to another.
Yeah,
and it's those soft skills that really play a big role in that.
So you're a liberal arts major. You're getting ready to graduate. Are there people out there hiring artists, or did you say, I got to go find something else to do?
No, I knew I was too business-minded to be a true artist.
Yeah.
But I did a lot of logos. I did a lot of logos on the side.
So you're a graphic artist?
Yeah. So it's, so some of that helps pay the bills. But I ended up in Augusta, Georgia, through a quick marriage and divorce. Ended up in Augusta, Georgia. That's where I ended up meeting my husband, and went to work in the telecommunications industry at that time. I started off doing marketing because, again, communications. Yeah. And then they saw I was good in sales. So a sales manager to a vice president. So I did that for 16 years, grew a career in telecommunications, but it started with marketing, art background.
I got to ask you a guy question. I mean, well, not a guy question, a golfer question. You live in Augusta. Is that great, or is the tournament a pain in the butt?
Oh, it's fantastic.
Is it?
I think it's the most beautiful place that time of year. It's fantastic.
Yeah.
Yeah. You got to embrace that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you're working for Alltel, and you start out on the marketing side, but they recognize and you recognize you could excel at sales. Mm-hmm. So you start selling.
Yes, and I built sales teams.
Well, walk through that portion of your career of starting in Augusta and where it takes you.
Yeah. So, back then in the old days, that was when wireless really first started, and phones were huge and they were really expensive. And it was really on the ground floor, building teams and recruiting folks to go out and sell. And when I look back on my career, my favorite part, no matter where I've been, has been building teams.
Yeah.
And I was successful at it, and then got an opportunity to be promoted. And back then, in order to be promoted, you had to move. Mm-hmm. It was a very male-dominated industry. A lot of women couldn't move. I was lucky. I met my husband, and he'd had a very successful career, and said, if that's what you want to do, I'm here to help support.
That's great.
And so we went from Augusta to Atlanta to Birmingham to Fort Myers. I did the Southern Loop with Alltel, and then 16 years later, I was in Fort Myers, Florida, and they got ready to move us again. And sometimes you feel like you're pushing so hard to succeed on the corporate ladder that you wake up one day and say, I don't even enjoy what I'm doing anymore. And that's how I was in Florida.
You were good at what you were doing, but it got to the point of you were just not necessarily going through the motions, but there was no satisfaction coming out of it.
Right,
Would
and
that be fair?
you're working for quarterly earnings, and
short term.
Very short term. It wasn't as rewarding, and after moving that many times, we were ready to get settled in a place.
Yeah. Yeah, and I want to go back to the cell phone thing. You mentioned the size of phones when you started. So I was starting my sales career when car phones became the thing. And I remember we had just gotten married, and it was a family discussion of if I should invest in a car phone because it would make me more productive. And you had to make an appointment to bring your car in and have it installed.
Oh, yes.
Then the bag phones came.
Yes, it's so funny to think back about. I wish I'd kept some of those, but
yeah, they'd be worth something today. So you've got the career going with Alltel, very successful career, 16 years, I think you said, and you're in Fort Myers. Where were they wanting to move you again?
Oh, God.
Does it matter?
Yeah.
So at that point, you go, there's got to be something more.
Yes.
I'm a little burnout on this.
Yes.
Was it a conscious effort to come back to Chattanooga at that time?
Chattanooga was one of about 5 places. My husband had retired. We could move anywhere we wanted to move. And he's not from here. He's from South Carolina. But we'd been, of course, back to Chattanooga visiting family over the years. Yeah. So we had a list of about 5 cities, Asheville, Charleston, Beaufort, South Carolina, of course, Chattanooga. And we came here. We came here over a 4th of July weekend. And it was when Bob Corker was mayor. And there were cranes everywhere. And we went to Coolidge Park for Pops in the Park, and it was just magical. I knew this is where we were supposed to be. He felt the same way. I didn't have a job. I didn't know what I wanted to do. I hadn't even told my company I was leaving yet, but I just knew this is where we were supposed to be. And from that weekend, we went home, and I turned in my notice, and we sold our house in 2 weeks.
Wow.
And I never forget, my mom couldn't believe I guess both my parents couldn't believe that, I had a successful career and I was just going to
just leave. Yeah. Without a job. Without a job. Else to go to.
So we sold our house, and the housing market was really tough at that time. We ended up, we had 2 weeks to go until we had to be out of our place. And I bought a place. My husband hadn't even seen it in Black Creek. And so we bought a house and we moved, and then I set about trying to figure out what was next.
So you really came back on blind faith.
Absolutely.
Was your network of connections that strong at that time?
I didn't have
Because you'd been
any.
gone 16 years.
I didn't have any. And that's before Facebook. That was before any of that. I've been a good networker because I moved so much.
Yeah.
And that's what you did when you're, starting up a company or representing a company in a new place. But I think a lot of it, Mike, comes from trusting your gut. I feel like I've always had really good timing about when it's time to go. A lot of people don't know when it's time to go.
Sure.
Or when it's time to make a move. So I look back on my career and I feel good about decisions I've made about when it's time to pivot. I also credit my husband so much. The fact that I had a spouse that supported me doing that gives you a lot of confidence that you feel like I'm not crazy on my own.
Yeah.
And when I came to Chattanooga, I thought, well, I know I don't want to be in telecommunications. Maybe I'll work for a nonprofit. And I just started learning about Chattanooga again. I started reading magazines and newspapers and trying to figure out what was going on in Chattanooga that sounded interesting. And I just picked up the phone and cold called people.
And I want to put some context in this because you're coming back after 16 years of being away.
Yes.
So where Chattanooga had started its renaissance, you weren't necessarily here for that. So you came back to a different city.
Yes. We came back in 2003. And
you said first thing you do is start cold calling people. So you leave Alltel, you buy a house sight unseen, or at least for Joe Dan.
Yeah, it was.
And networking is your forte. Talk through how you did the cold calling and who you identified and what you were looking for. Just how did you end up? Because I know where you ended up on that first stop back in Chattanooga. Just take us through that.
It's funny. I kept this list for a long time, and I may still have it somewhere, but I made a list of 20 people in this city that were doing things that I read about or sound like they were in the mix of everything that was going on, and just set out to try to understand the dynamic of Chattanooga.
Did you necessarily know these people?
No. Just
caught your attention.
Yes. Jack Murrah at the Lyndhurst Foundation was one.
Yeah.
I didn't know Jack at all then. I can tell you, Grant Law. I mean, people were so kind, and what I encourage people when they come, one, if you call me, I will call you back, and I love to sit down with people because people were so helpful to me, and people embraced like someone new wanting to come and get involved in the community. So my deal was, I grew up in Chattanooga. I've worked for a Fortune 500 company for the past 16 years. I want to come back and figure out a place that I can find my passion and put my passion to work. And I'm trying to understand where I could best fit. Can you help me? Can you give me a few minutes just to talk about what's going on and, give me the lay of the land and how I can get networked in. And I would say, with the exception of maybe 3 or 4 people called me back.
Yeah.
They sat down with me. It was about after, and this took 6 months or so. It was about 6 months or so. About the 3rd or 4th person I talked to said, "You seem to have so much passion for our city," because I was excited about coming back to Chattanooga. "You need to meet our mayor, Bob Corker." So the first person that says that, I'm like, yeah, that would be great. And so when the 3rd person says that, it was over Christmas holiday, and I thought, you know what? 3 people have said I need to meet the mayor, so I called City Hall.
Good for you.
And I got Bob Corker, through a secretary that, and that connected. And so I did my spiel with Bob and saying, worked for a Fortune 500 company, yada, yada, yada. So we set up a time. I met with him, 15 minutes, ended up being like 45 minutes. I talked to him for about 3 months. And I kept thinking it was about a job at the city and didn't know that, Bob had a real estate empire, that he was looking for someone to run his real estate company. And I ended up working for Bob Corker, and I don't know a better entree back into this community. And it was a job that I loved because it was connecting with people. I got to really understand a lot of the inner workings of Chattanooga because people were in the office buildings, people that you would never know, that I got to sit down across the table and negotiate leases. And then I got very involved in the community and and lots of things.
Well, you got some important points in there in that. One thing I found when I moved to town, and I got here end of 99, 2000, is I found Chattanooga to be a very welcoming city, particularly if you want to roll up your sleeves and get to work.
Yes.
A lot of cities go, no, we got that. We're good. But here, sure, come on in. Water's warm. As long as they understand you want to work and contribute to it.
Yes.
And the other thing I think is so important for people to hear is that if you just reach out to people, the majority of them will help you.
Yes.
I think one of the most powerful things you can say to someone is, I need your help, because it's very disarming.
Yes.
And most people are generous and genuine and big-hearted and will say, I don't know if I can help you, but I'll do what I can to help you. And that's how you get those.
You're exactly right.
Those 15-minute meetings that turn into 45 minutes and all of that networking, because as your point, you meet with one who may know two or three others.
When I talk to college students, I tell my story. I said I'm at the same point as a lot of college seniors. Right, you're getting ready to graduate. You're trying to figure out what's next, and you've got to get out there and just pick up the phone and call, because you don't know. You don't know what opportunities. I look at River City Company. I would have never known about downtown redevelopment.
Yeah, that
wasn't even a thing when I was in school.
Yeah.
So you're right. People are, I think, want to help and want to make sure other people are successful.
Can you imagine the number of people who see you going into the position of running Corker's properties who think, you mean all I had to do was call City Hall?
They had to be the right person to call City Hall.
Well, exactly. And quite frankly, you had to go through the other 20 people or 30 people that you met with to get to that point.
Yeah.
To call City Hall. So Bob Corker's mayor. He's got his properties. You take over running the properties. What's that entail?
Working with tenants, negotiating leases. He's very focused. I loved working for Bob. One of the biggest takeaways from that, one, has the most integrity of just about anybody I know. He cares and loves the city. Mm-hmm. He still tears up if you talk about some things in the city. I saw him pick up trash. I saw him. I loved the city before, but it put it in a totally different perspective to me about how people can make an impact and how people were making impact there. So and I met amazing people. I love now some of my best friends. I sat across the table and negotiated leases. So I think about people that got involved in my campaign. I'm like, that's good if we worked negotiating a lease against each other and we have a good relationship. But Bob sold his property when he ran for the Senate. Mm-hmm. And when he did that, the management company sold at the same time. And so I stayed there for about a year and a half, I think. But I had been really involved in a lot of things in the city. And I was on the board of River City Company at the time. And they were looking for a CEO and was approached to put my name in for that position. So again, it's through that involvement, and one door leads to another.
And it's all because of your art degree.
It's exactly right.
And I want to go back to one thing in your Alltel career. My assumption is you were probably doing a lot of traveling, even though you were living in these places, and you didn't have the opportunity to connect with those communities as much. Would that be true?
You're exactly right, Mike. Exactly. Like, you move every 2 to 3 years and you have a big territory, and I wasn't connected.
So when you got here, did that drive your desire to get hyper community involved?
Yes. I mean, when Joe Dan and I moved here, we said we wanted a place to put down roots that we could call home and become part of a community, because we really had not had that. So that's a great point. It probably did drive me being involved so much
Yeah.
in what was going on.
So you're running Corker's properties. You're on the River City board. Were you on any other boards at that time or community things?
Yeah, I think a lot.
Yeah,
I mean, I was on
'cause I would
the
imagine
chamber, and I did the Big Brothers, Big Sisters. I did Junior Achievement. I've done AVA. I think you could just think about anything. At some point, I was.
This, believe it or not, this podcast is not about me. But I do want to point out one thing. When I moved here, my dad was a successful businessman in Memphis. He had bought into a materials handling dealership when he was in his late 30s, moved from New York. And he said to me when I moved here, he says, when you move and you go to a new city, you spend your first year, 2 years saying yes to everyone. And that was such an important point for me because not only does it get you involved with a lot of things, if someone's calling you and saying, hey, we could use your help with it, it allows you to prove yourself outside what your business is, and it builds those networks.
No, that's one, it was great advice for him to give you that, and that's very true. And I've always been one, if I'm on the board, I normally am the one that takes the tough job.
Yeah.
Right? Because you want to prove that you can do it. Tom Ed Wilson, who was at that chamber at the time, became such a great mentor to me too, and really helped me navigate a lot of what was going on in Chattanooga.
I got to tell you my Tom Ed Wilson story because I consider him a mentor too. So I get here and I'm running Fox 61, and we've got a Sunday public service show. You know, every station had those, and we were having trouble filling the content. So I decided, because I needed to network, I said, well, why don't we take these public service shows and we'll give one to UTC because we just signed the coaches show, but this will be about what's going on in campus. We'll give one to the county mayor, we'll give one to the city mayor, and we'll give one to the Chamber of Commerce, and it would just rotate every week. Because we did that, we were able to get all of those folks into our studio once a month, and because Fox 61 wasn't known as a big news organization at that point or today, and it's just truth because you got Channel 9 and Channel 3 and Channel 12, but it really exposed me to Tom Ed, who put me on the chamber board, who put me on the executive committee, and really tremendously opened doors like I never imagined for me.
He was one of a kind. Yeah. We miss him in Chattanooga.
Yeah, he was a great mentor to a lot of people, and obviously very important to Chattanooga's growth. So you're here at a time, Bob Corker's influence as mayor was tremendous with the whole riverfront revitalization and all that, and then he runs for Senate in Volkswagen, and you're at River City Company by this time. So you're seeing all this. You're not a spectator. You're in the middle of all this.
Yeah, it was incredible. Yeah, so really incredible.
What's that like? Not just what's that like, but can you take us behind the scenes a little bit of some of the things that happened at that time that really set us up for where we are today?
Well, one of the things about Chattanooga that I don't think a lot of folks know is we really are a city that does a lot of planning and a lot of community input, and it doesn't happen haphazardly. So things that happen, I mean, it may take 10 years before you see things that happen. I look at the Chattanooga Bank building that's being now redeveloped, but I worked on that for 10 years.
This is the one they're turning into a hotel.
Yes. Yeah. So, I mean, things eventually happen. I look at, the Blue Cross Blue Shield headquarters that the DeForests have just done an amazing job with the whole village, West Village.
And you know what? I was such a skeptic when they came out with that. I'm like, West Village? What are you talking? They've done a tremendous job.
Incredible. Yeah, it's really incredible. So I think, what I loved was being in the room with a lot of really smart people to think about the future of the city, the future of what the city needed to look like 20 years from now.
Yeah.
And I feel so blessed to have had some role in that. I look at River City. River City is really like the secret sauce that what that organization has been involved with way before me. I think I was the fourth CEO in the history at that time. It's just incredible. Mm-hmm. Having a city having an organization that can take a long-term view and work with all the political entities, knowing that the organization's going to be here way longer than most mayors, and we just got to think about things long term.
Well, and you mentioned in your Altel career working for the quarterly
Yes.
or quarterly profits, the quarterly report. But what River City enables the city to do is not take a quarterly look at it. It's more of a decade look at it.
Exactly right. Plans that you could dust off. And I mean, there's still, when I was there, we did plans for the connection on Vine Street between Unum and UTC. Those plans are still some that we hope to see done at some point.
Yeah, the other thing you mentioned earlier, being growing up in Hickson and a bit introverted, when you're in these positions like at River City and in a room with a lot of smart people, was that intimidating to you because you were introverted, or had you kind of flipped that switch through your career and said, you know what, I'm going to have my voice and I'm going to contribute what I want to contribute, or what I think I need?
Yeah, I learned. I mean, that was a lesson back in college. Like if you're at a table, you're at the table for a reason, and you ought to feel confident. In fact, it's a disservice not to use your voice.
Yeah.
So, no, I think most people would be surprised to say they probably wish I wouldn't talk as much.
You know where I find that interesting, where people don't necessarily use their voices and they should, is on a lot of boards they serve on, because a lot of those tend to just be this motion and that motion. A lot of people just kind of go through the motion.
Yes, you're right.
To where they should probably speak up.
Mm-hmm. Because if you're thinking it, probably you aren't the only one that's thinking it.
Yeah. And I'm going to focus on River City because it was such an integral time that you were there. What was the most difficult thing about that job?
Probably the politics of that job, because that is a job where you work with not only the private sector, but you have to go through city council, county commission, 2 mayors. The mayors change, city council, county commissions change. So it was things that I'll give you an example. One of the things I'm most proud of was the Business Improvement District, the Downtown Alliance, and that should have been a no-brainer. You had business owners that wanted to put extra money in to make the city look better, and it was all political. That was the last thing I did at River City, but that was one of the hardest, but one of the things I am most proud of, because I'll think about what the core of our city would look like without it right now. Well,
and explain a little bit of what exactly that was. A special tax district?
It was a special tax district. So really property owners vote to tax themselves and put funds for specific things. And they even vote on what those specific things are. So you have to have a supermajority of property owners in a district vote for it.
So 60% or better?
I think it's 75%.
Oh, my goodness.
So we probably had 5 that were very loud voices in the district that didn't. But the majority, when you think about the DeFores that own so much property, to Corker, to everybody, it was a central business district that it encompassed. So you have to do that, but then you have to take that in front of city council, and city council has to vote. And it's not any city taxpayer money. It's the property owners paying for it. Huh. That shouldn't have been so difficult. And then you have to take it to the county, and that shouldn't be difficult.
No.
But it all was. But it did go through. And again, it's most great things they aren't easy, but that was a tough one.
Well, and it was probably tough and controversial because it was made political, because people want to say, I'm against taxes.
Yes.
And we're not going to approve this. But it's not really tax. They're taxing themselves.
Yes.
And the central business district in downtown is so important because that's so much of our identity. And if we don't protect that.
Well, I look at what would have happened during COVID if we hadn't had the Downtown Alliance there as other eyes, because no one was working downtown. And a lot of downtowns really became in terrible shape. But we have a group that goes around and does cleanup, and they do work with the homeless, and they do make sure it's safe. So I think it was critical at that time.
Were you still at River City when COVID hit?
That was right at the end.
Right.
No. Yeah. Because in 2020, I started running for mayor.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I was, but you probably have enough observation to
And
talk.
I live downtown.
Yeah.
I mean, I live
downtown.
right downtown.
So COVID hits. We've got this vibrant downtown. What was the first thing you noticed that was happening? Because other cities haven't recovered like us.
There were just no people. There were no people. And a city with no people is not, it's scary.
Yeah.
It could be a very scary place. So it affected the restaurants. It affected, I look at if we hadn't had some housing downtown and some hotels downtown, our downtown would have been in terrible shape. And it was in bad shape just because there aren't people walking on the streets.
Yeah. Yeah, it seems to have recovered quite a bit, but there's still a ways to go.
There's still some, yes.
So you're at River City and you decide to leave to run for mayor. Let's talk about that a little bit. What was your drive there?
Over the years, I'd had people ask me and come to me and talk to me about running for mayor. And I felt like, I'm going to say I'm not political, but that's probably a joke because every job I've had has been political. But I felt like I was in a position to see things that were broken. And I'm a believer that instead of sitting back and complaining, you do something about it. And I felt like I had been put in a place to learn so much about our city. I loved our city. And it was a way to give back. And it just felt like that was what I was called to do. I'd been at River City 11 years. It was time. I mean, River City, like most organizations, change a lot. The city changed a lot, and I knew it was time. But I just felt like that's what I was called to do.
You talked earlier about how you like to take the tough assignment. Did you kind of see that as the tough assignment? I've been exposed to all these things at River City. I know we've got a great city, but I also know we have a lot of challenges. This is a tough assignment, and I think I should throw my hat in the ring.
Yes. Bob Corker told me that if you wanted to make a change in a city and be a difference maker, there's no better role than be mayor of a city.
Yeah.
And he was really my example of a business person that did it not for political reasons. It wasn't because that he grew up in politics, but a business mindset that you could go in. And I had worked with so many developers that were frustrated with dealing with our city. Again, I felt like I was in a place that I had a great education of what was broken. And
it was all preparing you for that.
Yes.
So what were some of the things that you saw that we needed to address?
I think more of a business-friendly environment, how long it takes for people to get permits. Again, a lot of the developers that I worked with downtown were saying that they didn't want to do anything in Chattanooga. They felt Nashville and some other places were so much easier to do business with.
Interesting.
So that was a big one.
How does that hit you as the person who was running River City, hearing that, you know what, you guys are just too difficult. We're going to go over here.
And I saw it. I mean, the whole permitting process was just terrible. And I think it needed a fresh set of eyes. Maybe we need more builders and developers involved in that process. And I knew that, to grow a city is a big real estate piece, right? So we've got to grow the tax base. Public transportation needed a lot of help. Affordable housing needed a lot of help. And I knew that a city alone can't do that. It takes partnerships. And again, I felt like I had been exposed to so many of those partnerships and what makes it successful that I could have made a difference.
So the election occurs, you don't win, and that's got to be a hurtful thing. Maybe not hurtful is not the right word.
I don't know, Mike. It's really weird. I had people going into it. People said, have you thought about what you do if you don't win? And no, but I know that doors open and doors close.
Yeah.
And it was a crazy time. If you remember, there were 15 people that ran.
Oh, yeah.
So I was in a runoff with Tim, And I mean, he pulled together a huge coalition. It wasn't even the runoff wasn't even a close vote. But I felt I was totally at peace with it. I was totally at peace with it the night of the election. Probably more at peace with it than people that worked on my campaign, because I felt like I had done everything I needed to do to be true to who I was.
That's a great position to be in. You know, to feel that, you know what, I prepared, I gave it my best shot, it didn't work out, something else will happen for me.
I really had total peace about it. And I've never looked back, what could I have done? I've never even thought about that. I felt like I ran the race that was really true to who I was as a person, and that my supporters, people still say they were proud to have worked on my campaign.
Yeah.
And I wanted to make sure people felt good about me representing my whole team. So it's, yeah.
So all that happens. You're not at River City anymore. You're not the mayor. Do you take some time off for
Yes.
Kim and Jodan?
So in my mind, I was going to take 6 months and just do nothing, just kind of decompress. And you really need to. I didn't even really realize. And while I go back and look at the calendar, I mean, back then, especially with COVID, there were so many Zooms. I mean, it was crazy. It was crazy. The day after the election, I got a call from someone that said, there's a vice chancellor role at UTC, and everybody says you're the perfect person for it. I'm like, absolutely not. There's absolutely no way I'm interested in that role at all. I mean, I've loved UTC. It's been part of who I am. But no. So over the course of several months, I probably had like 5, 6, 7 people call about this role. And in my mind, it was like, absolutely not. I'm just, no. In September, so it's now about from April to September, I got a call that said this job is going to close. Have you thought any more about? I'm like, well, you know what? Maybe I ought to think about it more. I mean, it's kind of like when 3 or 4 people tell you the same thing, maybe you ought to think about it. And by that time, I really had more energy and just, I just needed a break. And I'm like, you know what? I don't know a better role for me. Like, I don't want to work for a for-profit. I had lots of developers and builders that wanted me to come do something. Yeah. It is true to who I am. I can't think of any place besides the city that I'd want to do something. I'd done every volunteer role you could do for the past 20 years at UTC. And so, yes, I decided to put my name in for it.
I find it so interesting that you said you almost rejected, but you got all these people saying it's perfect. Because when I heard you were going there, I thought, what a perfect role, because you were chair of the UC Foundation. You're obviously a huge Mack supporter. You're an alumnus. How perfect. And you're great at raising money. It was almost like, let's describe a job for Kim White. You'd write all those things down. It was almost the opposite. So to hear you say that it just didn't appeal to you at that time.
I think I didn't have the energy to think about
probably, yeah.
I knew that it was going to be a rebuild because I had been on the inside. I knew that it was a total rebuild, and I just don't think I had, at the beginning, had the energy thinking about, wow.
But you're the person who takes the tough assignments.
That's right. So after I had energy again, but I've loved it. I've been there. It was 3 years in December. And when I went, I said what I want to do, because I have such a history with the university and I had been on the board of UT, is I wanted to be able to put together the right organization for long-term sustainability and make sure that we could raise the amount of money we needed to year after year. And in December, I felt like we were at that point.
Well, you had a record-breaking $60 million raised?
Yes.
Was that last year?
That was last year. $30 million was a Gary Rollins gift for the Rollins College of Business, but $30 million for UTC is the most it's ever been raised.
It's a big gift.
And we are getting ready. I think we'll end up this year over 30 million. So it's been an incredible. It's been wonderful to be able to go out and talk to the community about the great things going on at the university. It's storytelling.
It is.
And I was a recipient of a scholarship when I was in school, and I know how those things change lives. It changed mine. And I have an unbelievable team going out and doing that. So it's been a very rewarding place to be.
How much of your Alltel career and network connections through River City and all that, how much did that prepare you for this role you're in now?
Oh, I think every role has led to another role. It's made me better and better and better. To be able to put together organizations, to be able to come in, and I love putting together organizations. I like to take organizations that are broken and put them back together again. That's what I did. Alltel grew by acquiring other organizations, and that was part of what I did, was move. And
you brought up storytelling. It's just storytelling, Mike. And that goes back to your arts degree.
Yes.
Because really, almost everything's storytelling. The person who can tell the story the best usually gets their point across.
Yes, you're right.
Did you ever think as a senior at UTC with your Bachelor of Arts degree that I'm going to be back here one day as a vice chancellor?
No.
So to your point, every door kind of leads to another door.
But it's, I believe you trust your gut, and you're right. One door leads to another, and sometimes those closed doors lead to something even better.
Well, you've been tremendous for the university. I know you're on the UT Board of Trustees also.
I was until I took a paid job.
Until you took a paid job. 100 most significant alumni in the history of the University of Tennessee system. That's huge.
That was huge.
That's the University of Tennessee system. That's not just Chattanooga. That's 100 alumni.
Yeah, that was quite an honor.
Yeah, I would imagine so.
Especially since I'm not a billionaire. That was quite an honor. Well, I think it goes back to, I've always been an advocate for the university. And it's been rewarding to be able to do something working with the city and working with the university. And, I look back to say, I don't know many people career-wise can say you've had an impact on two things that are the most important part of who you are. Mm-hmm. And I've been able to do that.
Mm-hmm. I know before Chancellor Angle announced that he was stepping back, that you had announced your retirement, but you've agreed to stay on. Do you plan to stay on for a while after the new chancellor's named, or are you looking at doing something else, or just calling it a day? I
think it's time to slow down a little bit. I want to be able to spend more time with my husband and travel, and I feel like he's really supported everything that I've wanted to do, and it's just time to take a break. I'd love to stay involved, and I'm looking at ways I could still stay involved, but not the hours.
Yeah. Well, if I have any guess, you will stay involved. And what I find interesting about, really your career arc is your two big loves are the city and UTC. And really with what you've been able to do, you've been able to mix those two.
Yes.
And how important is a vibrant university to a city?
Yeah, it's critical. It really is critical. When you think about the talent that we recruit, I think it's, some people wouldn't know now, but UTC, 67% of the students that come to UTC are outside of Hamilton County.
67%?
Yes. So we're recruiting talent to our city for the jobs that we need and for the region that we need. So it is critical.
Well, and when you were talking about when you went there, it was more of a commuter school. And when I moved here, it was a bit of a commuter school. It's a much different place now.
Yes, and now if we had more housing, we'd be a bigger campus. There's about 12,000 students right now. We want to grow to 15. Housing, we're totally full. If you try to find any apartments downtown, people outside of the core of the university are full too. So we're looking to build more housing.
Does that mean the campus has to expand, or they could build housing on what currently exists as the footprint?
Both. There's going to be 800-bed housing complex on Oak Street. They will break ground for that later this year. The business school is getting ready to expand. We have a grand opening in a week or so, and that will double the size of the Rollins College of Business. So it's the campus is absolutely, I think, the most gorgeous it's ever been. So people that haven't walked on campus in a while ought to
get over there.
Yes.
They've done a wonderful job of making it an enclave.
Yes, it's incredible.
What would you tell? Well, I'll get back to that. 67% come from outside Hamilton County. What's the biggest feeder areas? Is it
Memphis and Nashville?
Yeah, I was just getting ready to say, because I have a nephew who came here to school, has stayed, got married, lived here.
Yes.
I have a great niece who's currently in the entrepreneurial program who says she's never leaving Chattanooga.
That's great.
And what I found is, growing up in Memphis, that a lot of them get over here, and it's not just the kids who like it, their parents love it.
Yes.
And say, yeah, we want you to go to school there.
Well, so many come here because of the city.
Yeah.
So they do go hand in hand.
Yeah.
They absolutely go hand in hand. So the city of Chattanooga is a huge recruiter. And I think for quality of life, some kids want a big school. They want to go to an SEC school. But if not, you can't have a more beautiful city to have a campus right in the middle of, that the class size is such that you get to know your faculty and professors.
Yeah, it sounds like a great recruiting pitch.
Yeah.
Well, do have one more question
Sure.
for you, but before I get to it, I need to remind our listeners who makes all this possible. It's the Tennessee Valley Authority. I thank them for sponsoring my morning cup. Follow TVA on social media to learn more about its multifaceted mission of service, and visit TVA.com/do good here to explore exciting TVA career opportunities. And speaking of careers, Kim, you've had a great career, but I want you to think back to that 25-year-old Kim White, and what would you tell her is important for a happy life?
Life is a long journey. Take your time and take risk and say more yes. Say more, yes to more.
Say yes to more.
Yes.
I like that. Well, you've had a great journey, and I appreciate you making the journey over here to the Business Development Center to record my Morning Cup podcast.
Mike, it's great being with you. Thank you.
Thanks for listening to My Morning Cup, a podcast by Costa Media Advisors. If you like this episode, please share it with a friend. I release a new episode each week, so be sure to subscribe on Spotify, Apple, Google, or wherever you listen to podcasts.